Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Here in Tallinn, you have really such a nightlife. We really experienced it yesterday, so really compliments. I have goosebumps at least 3 or 4 times to see that here is it possible to go to a concert like before pandemic, more or less, and it was really, really, really beautiful. So I personally thank you I thanks Tallinn Music Week for this, and we thank as well as LiveDMAs, because hosting us is like putting the lights on the needing and the necessity of live music venues. So I'm Federico Rasetti. Okay, just right is written behind me. Managing Director of KeepOn Live and board member of LiveDMAs, which is the European association that gathered together all the National Association of Live Venues. With us, there is Kathy. I don't know if she's already connected with us. Maybe. Okay, cool. She's here. And Marc Wohlrabe, co-founder and board member of Clubcommission and LiveKomm, and Gonçalo Riscado, correct me if I'm wrong. Cool, perfect. Co-founder and managing director of Circuito. And we can step a little forward. Okay, so as you see in this time during pandemic, the live venues have already has eaten hardly by the restriction of COVID-19, but is as well true that they were challenging a lot of different aspects before the pandemic. So what we talk about today is how some best practices all around Europe can be used in these days to make our sector more fair and equal. And I think a lot of time about a sentence that a club owner in Italy said to me before pandemic, when I asked him to join our association, and he asked to me, okay, are we talking about philosophy or economy? I think that these topics today are really bound together, and this is the topic of today. We have a lot of good practices, good and best practice in Europe that can be shared and used to make this sector more fairer. And we have to rebuild our music ecosystem, thinking about and applying better in gender and social inclusion, and involving the diversity on our emerging artists, and of course being the official recognition for our venues a real fact. So if Kathy is here with us, I will let the microphone to her, and we can start to talk about. Okay, hi Kathy.
Hi.
Thanks
there.
for joining
Hello.
us. Cool.
Can you hear me okay then?
Yeah, really good. And would you like to start talking about your work on diversity roadmap, Kathy? I can skip slides, so tell me when you want to skip the slides.
Perfect. First of all, a big thank you for inviting us. We're delighted to present the diversity roadmap. When I say us, I mean HELVETIAROCKT. I'm going to talk you through what it is, who is involved, and the background context, and give you a few examples from within the diversity roadmap. The diversity roadmap is a physical flyer with measures and simple recommendations to address diversity and equality in clubs and at festivals. On the front, there's a flow chart to play through, and on the back there's a lot of text with recommendations. It's an awareness raising and reflection tool, and it's been distributed, discussed and presented in the music industry since 2019. It shows different ways to bring more diversity into the music industry, both on and off stage. So it's about how to communicate in the right tone, how do you intervene properly when a sexual assault occurs, what kind of infrastructure is needed so that people with disabilities or those with few financial means have access to culture. The diversity roadmap is not intended to be a dogmatic guide to action, but rather to create awareness of the problems and to support festivals and clubs in orienting themselves and inspiring them to take more steps towards more diversity. Federico, could you change the slide there? So here we'll start off with a quote. It's from Sophie Hunger, who's a Swiss artist who's been fairly successful internationally. She said that, with almost entirely male lineups, the festivals managed to shoot down two birds at once in terms of discrimination. They both exclude women, but they also communicate that publicly too. Felt that was very relevant in terms of contextualizing this. If you go on one more, Federico. One back. There we go. So PETSI, which is like the umbrella organization for clubs and festivals in Switzerland, and ourselves, HELVETIAROCKT, developed the roadmap in 2019 and presented it at M for Music. It's a similar festival as the one going on right now in Estonia, where you guys are. It was presented in German and French, and Live DMA was really enthusiastic about the roadmap, and it's now been translated into English and distributed Europe-wide. And we just released an Italian version of it too. Due to the success of the roadmap, we launched in March of this year a website. You'll find that under diversityroadmap.org, diversityroadmap, one word, .org. So if we go on one slide. So why a roadmap? We've organized many panels, mainly on equality. We've talked a lot, and we wanted to be more active, move forward with the diversity roadmap. It was drawn up by various organizations from the music scene, but also equality bodies and associations from the social sector. Our considerations, our society is diverse, and this should also be reflected on and behind the stage, in the audience, but also in organizational structures. The next slide. So that's us, that's HELVETIAROCKT. We're a Swiss national organization. In order to achieve equality, we believe strongly we have to work on different levels. So we have grassroots projects where we work with young women in electronic music, band workshops, songwriting camps. Then we also have empowerment projects and work on networking. We have a platform, it's called musicdirectory.ch, and there musicians, so anyone connected to music, so photographers, video makers, sound engineers, they can all register there and find each other easily. And then sensitizing work, for example, with the diversity roadmap and political lobby work. So we're working on all those levels. If we go on one slide there. I wanted to give some context with some pictures, just so you know maybe why this was such an important step for us to make this roadmap. The struggle for women's rights in Switzerland has a long and tough history. Women's voting rights were just introduced in 1971 in Switzerland. The first women's strike took place in 1991 because equality wasn't reached in many areas, such as equal pay for equal work or no maternity insurance. Then 30 years later, there was a second women's strike in 2019, again, because Switzerland was really still lagging behind in terms of equality. And at the same time, we wanted the roadmap to address not only equality, but also other diversity issues and to counteract discrimination. For example, here we see the Me Too movement. A study was released, a preliminary study. The results of that were released in June of this year in Switzerland in all cultural sectors. The results were really sobering. Women are massively underrepresented in the music sector. If you go on to the next slide there, you'll see what we're looking at there. We're looking at who are the decision makers, who are in the management roles. The second pie chart shows where the funding's going. All this is very binary. The analysis was done in a very binary way, but you see there just 26% of funding goes to women, 74% to men. We really thought we were making more progress with who's on stage, but there you see just 11% of women are on stage. And if we compare that to classical music, 34% of women are on stage, but just 7% would be conductors of orchestras. So that really gave us some statistical data to work with and to show that our work's really necessary. We, as an organisation, we demand, we want to see quotas. We genuinely believe that quality has nothing to do with gender. If we have quotas, then we start to think about how to get there and develop measures and start moving. So we're starting to count, and progress is measurable. It's a short-term solution for fast progress. We don't see it as a long-term solution. The diversity roadmap was developed with various experts. We focused on 5 thematic areas. We looked at communication, at programming, at infrastructure, intervention, and structures, which we consider to be central so that something really changes. When we talk about discrimination, to name just a few social categories of people, we're looking at gender, age, class, ethnic origin, physical appearance, disabilities of varying degrees, sexual orientation, and religious affiliation. So these social categories are embedded in power relations and determine social roles, as well, of course, as access to resources and spaces. Many people are affected by multiple social categories, meaning that they may experience discrimination multiple times. For example, a Black lesbian woman may experience racism, sexism, and also homophobia. I think important here is the roadmap shouldn't be seen as a process. It should be seen as a process. We don't award any diversity seals of approval. It's kind of an ongoing thing. We really want to encourage reflection. Our goal is not to tolerate discrimination, to promote respectful interaction, and to address and involve as many people as possible. It's also about participation, inclusion, and mediation. And what's really important, it's not a marketing instrument. So we have to be careful with attributions to target groups. The diversity roadmap, it presents some measures that could be implemented individually or in combination. It's not about finger pointing, there's no checklist. In a first step, it's more about looking at your own club or festival, looking at what we're already doing, where can we make changes. It doesn't offer ready-made answers and solutions, but it encourages people to question, discuss, and develop their own attitudes and actions. The project is a transformation and learning process for society as a whole, questioning one's own position and power relations. We are, however, convinced that even small steps on the way towards diversity and equality will bring progress if they're anchored in our teams, clubs and festivals, and geared towards a longer-term horizon. There you see we have five subject areas. What's not on there but is on the website is also prevention. Also on the diversityroadmap.org website, you'll also find definitions. So definitions of inclusion, accessibility, gender, POC, people of color, racism, etc. If we move on to the structures, where there are kind of questions you can ask yourselves: how many women do you have on your team, or in a specific jury? Who's responsible for intervention and prevention in your team? That proactive approach. And here we have an example for structures. We really do believe structures are central to making a difference. The composition of our teams, boards, juries, they all have an impact on the course of discussions and their results. We all know mixed teams get better results because of different perspectives, sensitivities, and experiences. Not all of us have the same privileges. Efforts for inclusion, participation, diversity are only sustainable, though, if they're anchored in the structures. So communication, language, text and images influence and shape our notions of, among other things, gender identity, ethnicity, beauty, etc. Non-discriminatory language, diverse images are important. We can break down stereotypes, we can create role models. More people can be addressed and included. And also in terms of accessibility, using simple language, letting folk know if there's a possibility to have someone accompany them to the event, maybe a wheelchair user, etc. So communicating that in advance. If we look at the language of images, I want to show you an example here. You see that that thinking about, hey, what does that show us? Who belongs on stage? Who's hidden away in the corridors? But really thinking about how to use our visual language. There's another example here, very stereotypical, sexualized female bodies. The front there in control, fully clothed, of course. But really thinking about external visual language. If we move on there to power structures, the following questions can help break it down. Also, alongside these questions, there's also the question of why. That should, of course, also be included. And where can we take action quickly? Where do the levers of change need to be applied? Going on to communication, or going back to communication again, about gender appropriate language. Is it being used on all channels, both internal communication, also external communication? We have a couple of examples. It's probably fairly straightforward for most of you, but avoiding using cliched or exotic descriptions of people, for example, with a migration background or people of color, describing them as hot-blooded or Latin-tempered, or someone has natural rhythm is not okay. So thinking about the language we use to describe, for example, artists. Programming, looking at free tickets for people on low income or cheap tickets, but also with programming, taking particular care with mediation at concerts for young audience, choosing artists and bands that represent diversity, but also who act as role models. And of course, not programming misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, racist or other degrading acts and events. In case you're in doubt, you can always enter a dialogue with the artist. It might even initiate reflection. And it's just a really good feeling to stand behind the artist we book. One more example is about infrastructure. Does it have good lighting? Is the signage in the right place, especially for people with visual impairments or hearing impairments? Is the lighting good for sign language, for lip reading? Those kind of considerations. Then moving along, we have intervention. That would be, again, that proactiveness. Are employees sensitized about sexual harassment, assault and discriminatory behavior? Do they know what to do in that instance? So there are a few examples from the diversity roadmap. You can get an idea as to what it's about. I'm going to finish off here with a testimonial. We actually wanted to do a survey of clubs and festivals, but Corona got in the way. But we do have around 30 testimonials from various players in the music industry. And here's an example of one from Kate from the Kui Jazz Festival. So I'd just like to finish off this presentation with that.
Thanks, Kathy. I don't know if someone of you is recognize herself or himself in this question. I was wondering, Kathy, if do you already get some feedback back from association or club or festival that use this tool, which is very practical? I think it's very useful for an organizer.
What we found is, it came out just before COVID hit, but we find a lot more festivals and clubs are using gender-appropriate language. A lot of people have taken the roadmap to their retreats where they're discussing future strategy, so making it a part of that. Clubs and festivals have drawn up awareness concepts, which they're then applying. And then what we've seen is training of security staff and getting them ready for certain situations and knowing how to act. So definitely some stuff's happening already, which is really good to see. And it's all part of a process, something that we have to keep looking at.
Okay, but do we have a flyer so we can show it? I think it's very useful. Okay, that's it. If someone want to see this, just ask to us and we can show you. Gonçalo, we have talked about engagement, no? The importance of engage communities, artists, venues for a clear goal. In this case, obviously diversity. You did something really smart in Portugal and about engaging, specifically about engaging artists and venues owner. Can you tell?
Yeah, it's a very specific action we did the last year, and I'm here just to shortly present you what we did. This started 1 year ago. Circuito Association started 1 year ago and started exactly with this action. We were 25 venues in Portugal. Of course, all of us very much worried about the future, but surrounded with artists, a lot worried about the future. The artists are still worried about the future. At that time, we got together and we prepared this campaign. Okay, they're talking in Portuguese, but it's like a dramatic, poetic text saying that it's about time to act, and we have to protect the live scene. And these are very known artists in Portugal. They play in big festivals and big arenas, but they respect a lot the grassroots movements, and they know that everything starts there. So they were the first ones to come in front and do this campaign with us. it's a little, yeah, you can discuss if you can have musicians burning their instruments, but I think the situation was critical enough to have this approach. As a result, we did this demonstration. So you have to see, 1 year ago, there was no organization in Portugal for grassroots venues. And it was not even a topic in the cultural scene or in the political approach. And then we did this, that is supposed to be a video that's not starting, but okay. It was really nice edit, the result. As you can see in the photos, it's people on the line to get into a venue that is closed. We did it in 4 different cities. We involved almost 1,000 people. I would say, okay, now it's coming. Yeah, the idea was to have people for 2 hours waiting on a line to enter a place they cannot go. It was the action that we did, and yes, and this is what happened. Okay, thanks to this, and thanks to artists, because a lot of artists were on this line, we got a major impact on media and also in some politicians. And okay, so this happened 1 year ago. It's a really short time, and immediately we tried to prepare some support programs national level. We're still working on that. It's been quite difficult, but we also prepared programs for for the cities, and one of them was for Lisbon City. We tried to reply to duplicate that in all other cities, but in fact until now only in Lisbon we were able to do it. And this demonstration was in October. In November, we had this project approved. And the idea was to protect Lisbon venues, support artists, give hope and confidence to audiences, and position city cultural agenda and diversity. The idea was very, very simple. So a budget to protect venues. When they are closed, what costs they still have. What are other supports they already have you can deduce. And then that's what we need to support the venue. So it was completely different number from venue to venue. We have big venues with a big crew, with a lot of expenses, and we have smaller ones that needed less. So in a trust relationship within all the venues, we reached this amount. And then at the same time, we had this programming budget. It's like each venue would have to promote 10 performances. Remember, this was at a time that it was impossible for us to be open because of the restrictions. Like a 300 club could take 20 people sitting, you know. So, to give stage to this kind of artists, it was needed something like this. So. Minimum 10 performances, average 4 professionals, either artists or technicians involved, and each one of them receives exactly the same amount of money. So with this, 12 venues, 120 performances, 480 professionals impact. That was the result of this program, that we worked with a common agenda, also to highlight in the city cultural scene what this represents when it happens or when it's not happening. The result, we did 153 performances in 2 months. And yeah, these are the results of all the artists that that were booked. This is interesting. We renewed this program last month, so it's going to happen again. We had elections in Portugal, local elections, and in August, Porto, it's the second city of Portugal, used this as an example, and they opened a call for the grassroots venues of Porto, not exactly like this, but similar to this one. So that was kind of achievement. But yeah, but what now? This helped us during this period, but of course there was a lot of problems before, and there are a lot of problems now. I think we will discuss a little bit about those problems after. I'm a lot thinking about this this situation of the grassroots venue, cultural centers, festivals. And artists, all technicians. We have to think there are artists that are known and they achieve success. But at the start of everything, it's every artist and every person that wants to become an artist. So looking at doing this exercise of looking at the music ecosystem, you usually think it as a pyramid or a circle. I think definitely it's now a pyramid. It should be a circle. It is a pyramid. And then you have the bottom and the up. And I think in the industry and everywhere, people don't like the bottom. The bottom is something, it's down there, you know. We want to be on the top. But the bottom, I love to be on the bottom, really, because the bottom is the pillar of everything. It's what sustains everything. And we are advocating for that for a long time. And this year and a half that passed, it really showed how the bottom is crucial and it's the pillar of everything. And if I don't know if you know, but we have a bomb here. It stresses a little bit because it's a countdown of the time we have. So maybe I have to stop. Okay. It explodes in 19 minutes and 30 seconds, just to tell you. But this I think this is very important, because when we look at the bottom, at the pillar of everything, we know that we are addressing all major topics that concerns industry. Like we're talking about diversity. The bottom, the grassroots movement, it's a tool for diversity. It's where the critical thought is there, where the experimental solutions comes first. So it's like a pillar essential for everything that comes afterwards. And I think not just this sense of being on the top, but also economic greed is putting a pressure on the pillar, or the bottom, let's call it the bottom. And the greed can destroy the pillar, as we know. They can do it because they don't know how to stop. And that's, I think, the interesting thought. And what are the critical points nowadays? I think it's an interesting discussion if the bomb let us do that.
Anyway, I don't hear tick-tock, so I think we are safe here. About, I think obviously grassroots are opportunity for local territory and for administration and authorities to grow up. We talked about this yesterday evening. You said me something like politics must invest in underground. And I said to you that, okay, it's look like a contradiction, you know, because underground grew up from the bottom, from the street, from the basement, from the so it quite a contradiction that invest in something that you can control. So, but you obtain a big achievement in Berlin because you have your club officially recognized as cultural institution. So I think it's something like this. So tell us, how do you achieve this goal?
Maybe we can see the first slide again, because there was the term explained. So what we, let's maybe start in what we are all over Europe, representing Germany and looking to this very good survey what Arne is doing for us nearly every year. It gives us always an inside view that we are all doing our culture and our business in Europe, but we are quite different by the background, what we are and how we have to act. So there's on page 15 a very important analyze. So we are quite different. What's the background, how we are working? So in Germany we have the situation, yeah, that was the slide before, please. Yeah. The other one. Maybe you can just keep it. In Germany we have the situation that nearly 60% of our venues which are member in our national organization LiveKomm, which is a member in LiveDMA, is a private organization. While we have in Belgium or Switzerland, and I think this leads to the point what we just saw this morning in the presentation, there are, in this survey, 0. We have 60, there are 0. So the background on what people are doing their art and culture is very different. We have in Germany a lot of people who are doing it on their and his own shoulders, by own risk. So they go to a bank, they have bank loans, they have loans with the breweries, but it's on their own risk. If you fail, you're bankrupt. That's business. So I think here comes to a point that, for example, we in Germany, we have a lot of pressure to control our developments in the way, what kind of acknowledgement we will receive from politicians. And what we have a situation in Germany, and maybe it's interesting to learn more about Portugal, about Spain, all these countries which have a similar situation by a lot of private venues, that by laws and regulation, we are in the same level like brothels, like game halls, like normal discotheques who do just chart music and selling a lot of alcohol, while all these kind of culture venues put a lot of effort in booking and artist development. So what we see where we see ourselves much nearer to theaters, what they do, for example, to develop artists, to have a huge effort in booking agency, in your booking department. And if you look to your cost structure, you put a lot of more money and effort into the artist section, where we see in the daily life ourselves on the section of the theaters. By regulations, we are on brothels, discotheques and game halls. And this is for us as a private venue organization, or a majority of private venue organization, a very different situation for future regulations or surviving in any kind of urban development processes. So I'm not very informed how that works in Belgium or in Switzerland. If your government just makes like that and you have a full saved cultural place. In Germany it's not like that, and there we come to a point, as I'm coming from Berlin, underground has become a heavy business. So we went to our politicians and said, you know, maybe Siemens was once founded in Berlin, but now they're Munich, and heavy industry now is nightlife. And we are. So we do around, only in Berlin, around 350 million euro a year. All the background business like hotels and airplanes and airports and all the nightlife restaurants before COVID is doing 1.3 billion euros a year just in Berlin. So there is no level where we want to put ourselves in the back and say, okay, you like our money, you like our taxes, but when it comes to regulations, you put us somewhere on a kind of regulation level what you have created like 40, 50 years ago. So we invented that way that we wanted to become an official recognition as a cultural institution. And that might be in other countries, I do not know yet. And I think that the survey also is not asking that yet, but it would be interesting for future developments to connect to the urban development units of the European Union. Does other countries in Europe have the similar problem, or is it just us in Germany? So in Germany we have an interesting situation. Yet the German parliament, even the conservatives, voted for yes, underground and club culture should become a cultural place. But the Minister for Urban Development and the ministries refused to adopt the law. So in the moment we're trying to find out with the majority of the parliament how we can force the ministry to adopt this decision of a democratic voted parliament. And now it comes, of course, to the point that we have a new parliament, so we will see how we work on that. But for the general development, what I would like to find out, as I'm also interested to come always back to the point, and I saw that this morning in this opening discussion, we are facing the situation that a lot of people in the music industries are just discussing about digitalization and stuff like that. But finally, I believe they are working on our shoulders and our work, because without live venues, the majority of this business is a very small and not very interesting business. So they need us. And I don't want to see them talking just about digitalization. I want to see them about real estate problems, about urban development problems, how to save the places in a world where everything becomes more expensive. In Germany, we have faced the situation that rental costs and costs for real estate were not going down in Corona. It's still going up. It's becoming even more expensive. I don't know how it is in your countries, but we will face next year a situation when all the German costs, the German funding for institutions to survive COVID, when they end this end of December and they have to stay again on their own feet, how many of them will survive? We had the lucky situation because of the German economic situation that we nearly lost no venue. No underground venue, no festival, no club. They're all there. They were just paid by making more debts, but our government decided to do it. Next year, when the funding programs are gone, the mixed out of local visitors and tourism, which was a very big amount in some of our German cities, like in Berlin, for example, will show if enough festivals and venues will survive. And to bringing back people into business, maybe even newcomers, we need that change into the law, that we can find new places and that they are not kicking us out by saying you are kind of the brother level, you are kind of game hall level, just search your club in an industrial area, because we don't have so many industrial areas anymore. So we need more opportunities to get back live business. And once again, I really would like to see that. Look at page 15 and you get an idea how different we are still, and how we can adopt our different programs. And for example, when I look back to the Swiss program, it's a very important program for a modern 21st century. But if people own their own business, it must be a free decision what they do in their own business, because if you take the risk, you also have to take the chances. If it's a public funded venue, I think the situation is different. If people don't take the risk and get the money automatically, you can force them more to open up for specific things. If you are doing it on your own risk, it must be your own decision. So for Germany, for example, we're looking forward now to start a women's entrepreneur program to bring women into a situation to own the festival, to own the club venue, not just to work with them, but if you are the owner, you're the boss. If you're the boss, you decide. It's your booking. You decide what you do, but you must survive. And to bring women to this situation to decide how to survive a market on clubs and festivals. In Germany, we need this new law to give them more opportunities to survive a real estate market which becomes crazy. So this is maybe a circle what I wanted to explain you, and when we are looking forward for our future programs, to keep in mind how different we are when we implement programs. I would like to open it to a discussion. I don't have to explain it all to you, but as we are here from many different countries, it's maybe interesting that you talk about your country's situation in the moment.
Thanks, Mark. That's right. We are just in time to open up the discussion to you. If someone of you has some question or just want to say something, this is the moment. Okay.
Hello. Yes, I would just like to find out about this official recognition from the parliament. What exactly...
Where are you from?
Hello, I'm Victor from Vilnius, and I own a venue called Loftus in Vilnius, in Lithuania. So it's all really interesting for me. But yeah, I would like to find out what this recognition would mean. Is it some kind of regulation for the rent that then the landlord cannot do something, or what exactly would this contain, this official recognition?
I believe, or we believe, it could lead to that point, because we see at the moment in Germany a political development where governments, and as you maybe know, Germany has 16 states, so the states are quite powerful, but institutions and governments in the states and even the national government are starting to buy back real estate, because they found out, surprise, surprise, that it was a big fault in the early 2000s to sell so much. So now they're investing. I mean, it's crazy. In Berlin, they have sold something for 400 million, and now they're buying it back for 1.5 billion. But that's the situation now. But they are buying back. And if we are coming back to a situation where the government controls certain real estate, and we have that law, we can influence the future planning of cultural places in areas which originally were only designed for a kind of urban normal, how do you say, residential plannings. We need back culture into the area of residential plannings, and not the difference of culture is noisy, especially club culture, so go to the industrial areas, goodbye. We have to break that up, and we will support the program also in our own conference, Stadt nach 8, thinking about how to plan clubs in new building areas, how to integrate club life. And here it comes that underground, where you said how to make underground a kind of planning issues, how make underground a part of policy. Of course, it will not disappear that we still have squatters and that they have to be protected, especially if they are cultural protectors, cultural squatters. But we don't have so many empty spaces anymore. So we have to come to a point where it has to be planned. And without that law, we cannot enter a broader planning area. How is it your country? Are you only allowed to go to industrial areas with club life?
Yeah, I mean, in Lithuania, it's also mostly this, how to say, grassroots. It's all private. We're a private entity. We do everything ourselves. I mean, we write a lot of, we try to get funding from the EU and from local things, so that works out, but it's basically everything you do is just your own risk. And yeah, for example, we started our venue Loftus, it's like a culture center 12 years ago, and was in a factory area, and we were the only place there. Everything else was factories, so we didn't bother anybody. And now there's about 1,000 apartments in the same area where our venue is. So every year it's becoming more and more difficult, because we're doing a festival which is in the whole area, a bit like kind of Teleskivi, this kind of vibe. And yeah, and there was supposed to be a law like a while ago in Lithuania that if you've started something like that afterwards, when there's this whole gentrification, that they cannot kind of kick you out or something like that. But yeah, the law was not taken, and we've had already like twice the neighbors tried to make our like alcohol license only until 10 in the evening, which is when everything starts. And yeah, so yeah, it's kind of really difficult. And also Vilnius is now blowing up, because a lot of the places were like, when we started 10 years ago, it was basically empty. Now everything around is just being built, and it's all like office spaces and loft kind of apartments. So yeah, it's kind of difficult. I don't really know how it will be, but I mean, we have the rent for 10 years. We had it for 10 years. Now we have it for another 10 years. So we kind of safe, but the thing is that the law is, if the neighbors call the police and say it's too noisy, then we have nothing to say. By the law, we're wrong. So basically, yeah.
if your government would buy it and would rent it to you again, would you think that would be a good solution for you if it is not owned anymore privately but owned by the government, which will dedicate it to a longer cultural process, as I maybe learned how it is in Belgium? Would you like to have that or not?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, the thing is also, I mean, if it doesn't tie me to the government, I mean, because we're really independent and we do everything independently, and we don't like to be told that we have to do this or that. So, but I mean, I think there are talks from, at least from the Vilnius municipality, to kind of, like for example, now there was this huge jail that they changed it, and they made the whole jail into like a culture space. So there's talks about that. There's already now like 2 or 3 places like that were like old buildings, like some kind of school or something like that, and they just gave it for like really low rent. You can rent it, and then you have to have a whole idea of what to do there. So like it becomes into like recording studio spaces or dance places and things like that. So that's starting a little bit. Yeah, but generally talking about for how to say, I don't know about the government, if they bought it up. I don't know if that's
okay, you're not sure about that.
Yeah.
Well,
pardon.
Oh, yeah, not just because we
20 seconds.
We're exactly we have,
Do we have 10 minutes
20
more?
seconds. So
If
someone else has some question, okay.
Thank you.
Obviously, we are here all day, so we can continue to chit chat over the talk.
Thank you for all the interesting topics. I was wondering, Marc, if you believe that the role of a night mayor can publicly and politically help in this process of recognition. If I'm not mistaken, in Berlin you have a night mayor, or you had one maybe, or there was a discussion. Okay, I'm mistaken. But do you think that maybe this point could be helpful in bringing up the questions about nightlife and culture club and underground?
We have a night mayor, it's the Clubcommission, so we refuse to have a night mayor because we are strong enough. We don't want to have another person who's just another person, our kind of very labyrinthic bureaucracy, where I know how it ends up in a city with 4 million people, such a strong nightlife. All the municipalities, all the local boroughs, all the civilians, they always will appoint to this person, which I suppose will have only maybe one person working in his or her office, and all the problems will be distributed to this person. This person will break down because the expectations will be so high and the results will be so low in a kind of a time of development. So we always tell all kind of governments in Berlin, please don't do a night mayor. You have us, you have the Clubcommission, we're existing since 21 years. We have like 12 to 16 people working continuously as a voluntary or even as a paid crew. Let's do us. Let's do that work, give us that work. Vice versa, if you are starting later with your local organization, or maybe if you have the feeling that you are not bringing enough economical power together, and a night mayor or night advocate can do a lot, because normally this person is appointed by the government, so it's a part of the government structure. Clubcommission is independent, so we are owner. Nobody can tell us what we do. It's just our club owners and members who tell us what we do, which is, I think, the better situation. Maybe the perfect situation is when you have both, and the person who works in the government as the night mayor is quite near to your local club organization. But if you have a longer club organization which has a good self-organization, I always would opt for, think about if you can do it by your organization without having this night mayor. But if you are starting quite late, I mean, we have done that 20 years ago, this night mayor can boost your situation inside the media and inside your government. So it's a...
It depends on the situation of
that's my
each
point
city.
of view, looking to that since 15 years now. And we have several night advocates and nightmares, like in Mannheim, in Nuremberg. So these kind of mid-range cities, which also have a nightlife, which also have a lot of problems. And here it helps a lot. But what I've seen also, these kind of night buyer persons also have to take over problems by prostitution, a lot of alcohol problems, waste problems in the streets. So this is not the work of Clubcommission. So we are really focusing on an artist-driven venue in that development. But I understand that a nightmare, which because it's a nightmare, a night advocate has to take it all. I mean, if I look to Amsterdam at what happens in the nightlife district, maybe Hamburg could need that. I don't know if you ever visited Reeperbahn. I mean, I come from Berlin. I always looking on Reeperbahn. It's like, I'm so happy that we don't have that in Berlin. I could not imagine what would happen to have a Reeperbahn in Berlin with all this kind of freedom. Yeah. So it depends on your city situation, your own state of organization.
Thank you.
So, as we've seen, the road for a more fairer live music ecosystem can pass through social values, diversity, even through economics aspect and urban planning. But as you've seen, there's a lot of different case history that works. They are joining forces and it works, and it's a little spoil for one of the next live DMA's panel. So practice this.
Maybe I can give back one thing as we are all joining today, our time here. We are thinking in Berlin for our Stadt nach 8 conference if we would set up a panel to talk about larger development areas and how to integrate club life. I'm the first time here in Tallinn, so I've never been here. I was very positively surprised yesterday working around the city, and when I ended up in this nightlife quarter, I had a really fun night with some really nice bands. I don't know if this nightlife quarter is just a kind of, if it also has a kind of risk pressure that it will be erased in 5 years by real estate development. I hope that Tallinn is smart enough not to put residential living into that kind of former industrial area to keep this nightlife district alive. I knew nothing about it, but I'm very interested to learn from your cities and your countries if you know about larger plannings, and not only for a specific one place, but if a whole area, because we would like to set up the focus on developing nightlife and club life into new area developments. So please talk to me, and if I have the feeling that we can put some really interesting project together, we would like to set up in 8 weeks a panel on that in Berlin.
Let me just add something, Marc. First to say that your work is incredible. We're using all you do to advocate in Lisbon. It's and we've been working with a lot. And just to make a bridge between the talk that was going on over there and the importance of our work on the grassroots, on the dynamics of the city, on the preservation of the local cultural and involvement of the neighborhoods. That's critical, and that's what we do. For instance, examples like was given there of the big tech fair going to Lisbon as a huge cultural and touristic success. It's not that. That's the zoo, I call it the zoo action. It's like moving thousands of people to take advantage in 2 days of what's there, and then you dry everything. If a city doesn't prepare these kind of actions, investing in the local scene, in the preservation of the neighborhoods, on people living on those places, these kind of actions, it's terrible. And so, like as a counterpoint on what was being said there, just to underline what you've been saying.
Katie, are you still there? I think no. Okay, so thank for everyone again for being here, and have a nice continuing. Bye.